Hey guys, first of all, I do apologize if you hear any vroom vroom. That's going to be like notifications, email notifications, Facebook Messenger notifications, uh, phone texts, and all that, coming in. So I do apologize if you hear that. But I wanted to come on here, and it's been a couple of days, but I wanted to give my thoughts on the fact that on SmackDown on Friday night, the WWE officially introduced the WWE Women's United States Championship. Now, for a lot of us, as, content creators that have what's known as creator wrestling leagues, one of the championships we would probably create most of the time through 2K or any other wrestling related game, but mostly the 2K WWE series. Basically, one of the championships we would, create is a women's, United States Championship, a women's United States Championship, or a women's Intercontinental Championship, or a women's television championship. These are things that I've done and I continue to do with my DCWA league. But others have done it in a similar fashion. DCA has done it somewhat, Destiny Championship Alliance. CCL, I should say, CAW Champions League has done it. CAW All-Stars has done it. VWU, many notable ones have done it. And now we're seeing our fantasies, or what we would mainly create in our leagues, via video games. We're now seeing a lot of that come to fruition, on the, on the actual program, on the WWE program. Now, I also do apologize if I sound a little, slurish. I am tired. I did work today, so I do apologize. But as I was saying, we're starting to see a lot of what we would do as fans creatively with the video games. We're seeing it become a reality. Now, of course, this is being done to bolster, or help bolster the women's roster even more so. Because the closer we get to the debut of Raw on Netflix and the potential, if not factuality, of Raw and SmackDown going 3 hours at the beginning of 2025, obviously TKO and WWE realize they need another championship, especially if they're going to call up several more women to the roster, going forward. And a lot of notable names have been thrown around as to who could be called up. Cora Jade, Roxanne Perez, Nikita Lyons, maybe if she doesn't get injured again, and so on. There's a lot of names. You got Jordan Grace coming in. You got, the potential main roster debuts of Stephanie Valcour and Julia and Zyra, the former Delta, if you will, showing up sometime next year, maybe post WrestleMania on the main roster. So you got a lot of these women potentially coming up with a lot of women coming in, through free agency as well as, the WWE ID program. Now, with that said, how should this Women's United States Championship be, I guess you could say, won? Because apparently, at first, a lot of people were confused of whether or not it was going to be, just SmackDown exclusive. But according to Michael Cole and other sources have confirmed this, apparently, it will be floating between the brands for right now. My thought is they're going to have it float between the brands for a time being, and then after they bolster and add more to the women's roster on both Raw and SmackDown, mostly Raw, I think post WrestleMania, that's when you're going to have Raw via Adam Pearce introduce a women's Intercontinental Championship. I believe that is coming. I believe that is indeed coming. But with that said, the question is, how should this this inaugural championship, be won, on between Raw and SmackDown? Well, first of all, I think you also should add in a few NXT stars to kind of really make this championship feel important and feel like these NXT women that you're going to choose have really earned the opportunity to take that next step. Now, again, how is this won? How is this championship won? Well, my first thought was we don't have a women's War Games match. Well, we didn't until this past Monday, hinted at one, and then, of course, the tapings for next week's Raw pretty much confirmed what we're getting, and I'm sure the same goes for the SmackDown live event, or the SmackDown event this Friday, and the live event that's going to also have a taping, if you will, coming next Friday. We're pretty much confirmed a women's War Games match, even if it was rushed as hell, if you will. But again, my first thought was, well, we didn't have, I should say, at the time they, introduced this, my thought was, well, we don't have a women's War Games match. Why not take a page out of WCW's playbook and have the women enter the War Games match, that are going to compete for this? Have the women chose from Raw, SmackDown, maybe NXT, come and compete for this championship in a War Games match. Have them do that. Now, you might say, well, that's kind of basically like Elimination Chamber. True, but Elimination Chamber is where you eliminate somebody until it comes down to just, the single sole survivor, right? Here, with War Games, you add the War Game element of first pin, first submission becomes champion. So I think that would have created an interesting element and really put importance on this title as being a championship that needs to be focused on, needs to have importance put on it basically from the start. So what better way than to do it in a War Games match, with five women, or 10 women, if you will, because you got to have 5-on-5, right? But 10 women, and you have those women compete, or you just do 6 women and you go the War Games route. And again, the difference between it and Chamber, what is with the War Games situation, first pin, first submission. And, and I think that would have worked because all of a sudden you would have a champion like in the midst of the melee get crowned either by pin or submission. I think that would work. I think it would really work. But now the question is, well, since we're getting a women's War Games match based on what we saw on Raw last night and the tapings upcoming on Raw and eventually SmackDown this Friday and the following 2 Fridays, afterwards, basically now the question I should say is, how do they contest this? How is this, done? Well, people like Solomonster, Jason Solomon, and JD from NY206 have come out and have said and agreed that doing a traditional Raw versus SmackDown Women's Survivor Series match with the winning brand's team being the contestants, being the ones that compete for the title at Saturday night's main event, maybe in a ladder match, is one way to go. And I agree. It is one way to go. Because basically, by having either the Raw team or the SmackDown team compete against each other in 2 weeks later, it shows the importance of that title, especially if it's going to become somewhat semi-exclusive to the brand that wins it or has it at first. Which, I'm totally cool with, because it would give more motivation for the other brand to say, okay, I'm not seeing much of that women's title on my brand. I'm going to create up my own women's secondary title, and that makes way for the women's intercontinental title down the line. That's one way of doing it. That's one way of doing it. I'm not in disagreement with that. But I think another way you do this is you do a tournament. And I know people are thinking, well, a tournament is so old-fashioned, so old school. Why would you want to do it? Just waste people's time. This is why I think they should do it. What they need to do, and they've done this before, is hold gauntlet matches or beat the clock matches. And whoever beats the clock or whoever gets the closest times, they could get ranked, or seeded in different ways. So let's say if you do beat the clock and somebody wins in, let's say, 50 seconds, they can theoretically, if you will, be the top seed until someone beats their time. And that's the challenge. Whoever gets the fastest time is the top seed. Whoever gets the second fastest gets like seed number 2, and so on. You can do it like that, or you can do a gauntlet match. The winners of the gauntlet matches end up in the tournament, and you can make it a mini tournament. You don't have to make it, an 8-woman, 10-woman, 12-woman bracket. You can make it a 4-woman, tournament. Basically, the 4 women that win the gauntlet matches will be it. Although, like I was saying, and I do apologize, as I mentioned earlier, I am tired. But like I said, the 4 women that win the gauntlet matches compete in the tournament, and you can have 2 from Raw. You can have 2 from Raw, 2 from SmackDown. So you have basically a 4-woman tournament. But the 4 women that win from both Raw and SmackDown compete in the tournament, the mini tournament, if you will, and then you have the finals on the first Raw on Netflix. You have the finals on the first Raw of Netflix, and then whoever wins, that person not only becomes the inaugural women's champion, but basically, makes the women's United States title for that time somewhat property of the brand that it's on. Not total property, because it has to float. It has to go between the brands. But still, basically, sort of more of an exclusive title now to the brand that it's in, and you could create a little bit of, tension with the general managers, to the point that, like I said, one of them, mostly whoever doesn't see that championship all the time, says, enough. Enough of this BS. I'm going to create my own title. And by that time, which could be around post-WrestleMania, you can have enough women on the roster to be able to justify a women's Intercontinental Championship. But yeah, I think there's 2 ways, like I said, to go with this. A beat the clock, challenge to where whoever, gets the highest, whoever gets the fastest time gets the highest seed. And then, you kind of build it from that. Second fastest, third fastest, you get the idea. Or you can do a gauntlet match to where you have 2 women from Raw and 2 women from SmackDown compete in a mini tournament, and the winner that represents Raw and the winner that represents SmackDown meet each other on the first Raw on Netflix to crown the first ever women's United States champion. I think that makes a lot of sense to me. But that's how I would do it. And hopefully maybe WWE is considering that, down the line with, the Netflix premiere not that far off. But let me know what your thoughts are. Let me know how you feel about, this Women's United States Championship. What do you think about it? How would you, present it, to the winner? How would you make it, feel important? How would you get to that point? What kind of, direction, match-wise, tournament-wise, whatever, would you go to crown a, first ever champion? Let me know. And until next time, guys, I will talk to y'all later. And until then, I am out.